There's a lot of weird and wonderful animals in the world, each with its own unique set of adaptations. And today we're going to be covering one of my favourite, which is the giraffe. An animal which is so bizarre. When they were first discovered, people thought that they were the offspring between camels and leopards, and as such the Latin name for giraffe still reflects this, and I'm going to absolutely butcher the pronunciation, but it's Giraffe camelopardalis. And as a species, they look so distinctly different from everything else. In fact, this right here is the closest living animal to it. It's called an okapi, and it kind of just looks like a zebra where they've run out of paint. And in terms of the size, it's nowhere near a giraffe. A giraffe can be anywhere up to 18 feet tall, whereas this okapi is more like the size of a small horse. Now, obviously, the big distinguishing characteristic that a giraffe has is its huge neck. So this neck is 1.5 meters long, and it allows the giraffe to reach up to the highest trees to get food, and it will also allow it to see predators far off in the distance. But it's also going to be massively helpful for the giraffes in trying to find a mate. You see, the male giraffes undergo a process called necking. What this is the male giraffes fighting each other to assert their dominance. As such, the males will have bigger and thicker necks. The other thing that they have that you'll notice next time you go to the zoo is that the males will have really bobbly heads. What this is essentially like a helmet. They get lots of these extra calcium deposits, which is going to protect their skull and ultimately the brain when they do this fighting. Now, the other thing that's interesting about the giraffe's neck is that despite the size, the neck actually has the same number of vertebrae in it that ours does. And in fact, owls have twice the number of neck bones that giraffes do. Now, obviously, being such large animals, everything has to adapt, and one of my absolute favourite adaptations is their heart. If we had to compare our heart to a giraffe's heart, our heart weighs about 200 to 300 grams, which is about the same as a Coke can, whereas comparing that to a giraffe, their heart weighs 11 kilos, which is the same as 55 Coke cans. This colossal heart gives them the highest blood pressure of any land mammal, which allows them to push the blood all the way up 1.5 meters to their brain. What's fascinating here is that when they lower their head and they actually have gravity working with the blood, it doesn't all rush to the brain. In fact, giraffes have a number of different adaptations to the blood vessels, which helps to limit the amount of blood that's rushing to the brain at any one time. And in fact, these adaptations have helped to inspire people when designing flight suits for fighter pilots and astronauts. As in both of these industries, differences in G-forces can lead to blood being pooled in the external limbs. If you'd like to learn more about this, I'll leave a couple of links down in the description down below. Another fascinating adaptation that they've developed is huge tongues. In fact, a giraffe tongue is 45 centimeters long, which is about the distance between my elbow and the tips of my fingers. And these tongues are incredibly dexterous, which makes them incredibly useful for picking out individual leaves from the thorny acacia bushes that they eat. In fact, giraffes will spend up to 20 hours a day feeding, which is the equivalent of watching the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy twice.
What about second breakfast?
And during that time, giraffes will eat an absolute ton of food. In fact, a single giraffe can eat up to 34 kilos in a day. Now, because a giraffe's tongue is out for such an extended period of time, they actually risk getting sunburned, but they've got a wonderful adaptation that prevents this. That is that their tongue is full of melanin. This is a substance which will protect them from the UV rays, and it's what gives their tongue that fantastic blue-black colour. Now, if any of these weird facts are going to be keeping you up at night, don't worry, because you're going to be in great company. Because out in the wild, giraffes will only sleep between 5 and 30 minutes per night in what's called micro-sleeps. And they actually do this while standing up, and when you find out why, it makes total sense. You see, giraffes need to remain alert, as they're on the menu for most species. And when we think about how most predators hunt, especially big cats, they'll often aim for the neck. And by lying down, you're effectively making that target even easier. One of the only places you'll see giraffes lie down is in zoos where there's no real threat. This is also why in zoos they'll change their sleeping habits to being around 6 hours. And if you do see them in a zoo trying to get back up, you'll see just how cumbersome it is, and if you're trying to react to a predator, you're not going to have a chance. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to learn more about the wonderful world around us, click this video right here, and I'll catch you in the next one.